Hello, my name is Flo de Haan and I am the co-author of Western Empires together with my friend John Rodriguez and my cousin Gerard. We have spent over 10 years developing this game based on a classic game called Civilization by Francis Tresham. Western Empires can be combined with Eastern Empires to make Mega Empires. That game can be played by 18 players. This game, Western Empires, can be played by 5 to 9 players and takes up to 12 hours to play. If this is the very first game you are ever playing, there is a booklet in the box that says the first game, and it is a recommended setup scenario for 5 players. It takes 90 minutes to 2 hours somewhat, and it will explain the basics of the game to you. This is very easy. In the full rule book there are setups for each number of players. Whenever you play, for example, with 5 players, you take the numbers 1 to 5, randomly deal these cards to the players, and each player will choose a civilization in turn from the civilizations that are in play with this exact number of players. We have 9 different civilizations. We have Iberia, we have Celt, Rome, Carthage, Hellas, Minoa, Hatti, Assyria and Egypt. I have here these 4 civilizations just for this demonstration. In a full game of 9 players, we have all those 9 player mats around the table with tokens like this. Exactly 55 population tokens, 4 ships and 9 cities. So if we play with 9 players, all areas are in play. If we have, for example, 5 players, there's a specific area marked on the board that is in play. So just for explaining this video, I have put the AST here on the map board. Normally it will be at the side of the table. So everyone will start with 1 token in their starting location. Here it says Celt, we have 1 in Rome, yellow here on Hellas and Minoa. Well, all 9 players will do that. I will only have 4 players for this scenario. For the rest of the game you can ignore this starting location, it's just for setup. This game is played in 15 game turns, each of which is divided into 13 phases, which are played simultaneously by all players. All 13 phases are displayed on the various player mats. This tutorial is meant to explain the basics of the game and will not go into detail for all phases, as some phases will only appear in a middle-late game. I will start with the first few turns as an illustration for a full game, and will encounter the most important details along the way. The very first turn, everyone will go to 2 tokens during the phase called population expansion. That is the second phase here. The first one can be skipped in the first turn. So everyone will go to 2 tokens. Well, the actual rule for population expansion is for every area where you have 1 token, you get an additional 1 token. For every area where you have 2 tokens, you get an additional 2. Every area where you have more than 2 tokens, you get an additional 2. So it's not doubling, it's not multiplying, you can only get 1 or 2 tokens. At the end of population expansion, everyone will have 2 tokens. Then the next phase will be movement. Every token can be moved 1 step by land. This is a land border. We also have water borders. You cannot cross these water borders. So everyone will move simultaneously. It's not a turn-by-turn procedure. So everyone at the same time can do this. For example, now you see what I have done. I have flipped each token that has moved. Why is that? Because now you can see which token has moved and which has not. If, for example, I have this situation, everyone here at the board can see this token has moved, this one has not. Because everything is going simultaneously, you have to do that. So I will move this token here, and then when every player is done, we will switch them back to the colored side. This is the end of turn 1. Well, it is very simple. The very first turns will go very quick, but later on it will take somewhat an hour per turn. So at the end of the turn, we're going to check the ASD if we meet the requirements. And in the Stone Age there are no requirements, so everyone will move one step forward. So we're at the beginning of turn 2, and the first thing we do is population expansion again. Now there is this situation here with Rome and Celt, and they might want to move in the same area. Now we have these population limits. These are these numbers here. We have 1, 2, we have a 0 here in the north. We also have a number 3 and a number 4. So these vary from 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. These are the only options. This is the population limit, and every area can only have a maximum of this number, not during population expansion, but only after movement. So if you want to go to the same area, for example like this, at the same time, we will exceed this limit by 1, and then we will lose population, so we don't want that. Also, if I would stay here with Celt and I have 2 population in an area that can only contain 1, I will lose 1 at the end of movement, and I don't want that either. So we have to see how we can do a situation where we don't exceed the limits. So for example, we can agree, Rome and Celt can agree by moving a token here, and Rome will go here at the same time. You have to negotiate there, because those players will do it at the same time. In this situation here, Rome and Celt have negotiated on where they want to go. So Celt will go here, Rome will go here. Neither player will exceed the limit, so there is no problem. If I do that for each player, we will see where we can go. Now, each player has done their movement, and after movement we will flip them back to the colored side, and then we have to check for surplus population. Do we exceed limits? No, we do not. No player exceeds limits, so there is no problem. This is the end of turn 2, and we will check for the ASD if we meet the requirements. Well, Stone Age has no requirements, so everyone will move one step forward. Now in turn 3, we're going to do movement again after population expansion, and we have a situation here where Rome and Celt might want to go to the same area now, and the area has a population limit of 2, where we have multiple tokens that want to be there. So for example, Rome will go here and Celt will stay here. Well, after all movement is done, we have 3 population here where it can only support 2. So we have a conflict. And conflict means that you have to remove tokens. The player that has the minority has to remove the tokens first. So in this case, Rome will lose 1 token, put him back on the player mat. And you don't want that, because now you see that 4 expands to 8, and 8 will expand to 16, and 16 will expand to 32 in the optimal situation. Well, Rome has 1 token short, so 7 will expand to 14, will expand to 28, so you have a problem after that. So Rome doesn't want to do that. So you have to see who has to go first in this situation. Well, everyone will move simultaneously, but for this situation you can look at the ASD ranking. Celt has a lower number than Rome, and the rule is that Rome has the right to wait for Celt with a low number to do the movement in this area. So Celt has no choice and says, okay, if you want to go there, I will have to keep 2 here, and I will move these tokens here and these tokens here, and then Rome will say, okay, now you're done, I can do this, and I can even move a token here and here. Well, Rome doesn't have to wait for Celt to finish all their movement. So if I move them back to the original locations, what actually happens during movement is that Celt will move these tokens here, And at the same time, Rome will move these tokens here. The only debate is around these areas. So Celt says, okay, I will do this here, and then finally you will get to the point that Celt says, okay, I will put these here and these here, and then Rome says, okay, I will get 2 tokens here, and now I have the majority here. Celt has no option to change their movement. Well, if you take a look at the census track, what we've done here is we have these tokens here. Whenever you declare you have finished your movement, you can switch them to the white side. In this case, Celt says, I am done moving, and then Rome can react. Whenever Rome moves, Rome can choose to move before the turn and says, well, Celt, you're still busy moving. For example, Celt is still making up decisions here. And Rome says, no, I'm done. I will put him here, and Rome will switch it back to the white side. It doesn't matter. Each player may decide to finish the movement before their turn, but the higher number here will have the right to wait for the player with the lower numbers. The census track is only used after population expansion. Every player marks on the census track after population expansion how many tokens they have on the board. So for example, like this. Rome has 16 tokens, Celt has 16 tokens, Hellas has 15 tokens, Minoa has 12 tokens. Well, in this case you can use the numbers to look at the order of priority in movement. So like this. Celt has the lower number and Rome has the higher number. Here it says, during movement, players with fewer tokens may wait for players with more tokens. This goes in priority. Only if the situation where 2 players have the exact same number of tokens on the board, the tiebreaker will be the AST ranking. This is the first rule, the AST ranking is the second rule, the tiebreaker. So later in the game, you will have situations like this. Celt is here, Hellas is there, Rome and Minoa will be here. Then it's easy to see. You can look at the arrow here, order of priority. Players still move simultaneously, but they have the right to wait for players with more tokens. So you want to avoid conflict early in the game. That's very important. So you better negotiate than get a situation like this where you will lose a token. If you want a war early in the game, like this, you will fall behind in development. And if you have 9 players and 2 players are battling for a few areas, they will both fall behind compared to the 7 other players. So you rather not do that early in the game. Now we have a problem here at Minoa. Minoa can only support 5 population. We have a 2 and a 3, and Minoa has 8 population. Well, now we have to build a ship. Why? Because we want to move out of the islands. If you want to build a ship, you can do that at any time during movement. You can see that Celt and Rome and Hellas already have done their movement, and Minoa still has to do the movement. Minoa can say, well, I move 2 tokens here, and then I want to build a ship in Knossos. If you build a ship, you have to sacrifice 2 tokens from the board. So for example, Minoa sacrifices these 2, and now you see Minoa has only 6 tokens left. We'll expand to 12, we'll expand to 24. So Minoa now has a problem. So you don't want to build a ship early in the game, but Minoa has no other choice than do that. So a ship can move 4 areas at a time instead of 1, and can hold 5 tokens at a time. So Minoa can say, I will move here to Festus, I embark 4, move an additional step, disembark 2, move an additional step, disembark 2. So now you see the upside of a ship. Minoa can expand to much more areas at a time. It is an upside and it has a downside, because Minoa will fall behind in expansion. But if you take a look at the AST here, every player needs to have 2 cities on the board, and Minoa has 1 additional step in the Stone Age with no requirements. So that's a compensation for Minoa only. As you can see here, later in the game there's also differences at the AST. So every player will have to meet up with how they are on the board and see how they can fix their situation at that point. So at the end of turn 3, everyone should have switched their tokens back to the colored side. And we're gonna do the AST again. There's still no requirements, so everyone will move 1 step forward. Now, at the beginning of turn 4, first we're gonna do population expansion again. When I do expansion, I place the tokens on the white side as well, because now I can see exactly which tokens have expanded and which have not. For example, here I have 2 tokens. One is expansion, one is the original token. Here I have 2 original tokens. If I would put it like this, I don't know which one has expanded and which didn't. So it makes it easier. All players have expanded the tokens simultaneously, and then we flip them back to the colored side. The next turn is again movement. We have a new situation here with a ship. At any time during movement, Minoa can use that ship or decide not to use a ship or build a new ship. Any player can do that during movement. If you want to use a ship that's already there from the previous turn, you have to sacrifice 1 token. Minoa can do this. I move 2 tokens here, then decide no, I don't want to use that ship anymore, and sacrifice it. Even say, oh, I sacrifice these 2 and build a ship here. Well, it's not the best option, of course, but it's possible. So we're gonna see how we can do movement. I will do a movement, that's an option. So after movement, we switch all tokens back to the colored side. So we switch them back to the colored side. This is the end of turn 4, and we check the AST again, no requirements, so everyone will move 1 step forward. And next turn I will explain conflict in more detail. At the beginning of turn 5, things get very crowded already. So first we're going to do population expansion again, and we will have multiple conflicts. I will explain them. First we're going to check the AST, what the requirements are for the next turn. The Stone Age didn't have any requirements, but early Bronze Age says you need to have 2 cities on the board. So I will explain how to build a city and also how a conflict will go. On the board there are these black markings here. These are called city sites. If you want to build a city there, you need to move at least 6 tokens in the areas. You can also do it in an area without a city site, but it will require 12. And you don't want to do that early in the game because you will fall behind in expansion. So we're gonna see if we can build a city here for Celt. So Celt will say during movement, I will keep these 2 here and move an additional 2. And now we have 6 tokens here. We exceed the population limit by 4, but we will only check for that after city construction. So I will do the movement here. Right, after movement, during movement we have a few situations that we need to look at. For example, here Celt attempts to build a city for 6 tokens, but Rome can still move 1 token in here. Well, 1 token would not be a problem. There will be a conflict first, where Rome has to remove 1 token, and there's still 6 left. But if Rome would move 2 tokens here, and Celt cannot adjust their movement, then there will be a conflict after movement, where Rome has to remove 1, then Celt has to remove 1, then Rome, and now Celt only has 5 tokens left, which is not sufficient to build a city. So in that case, Celt will lose 3 tokens to meet the population limit. So Celt has to see what Rome wants to do. If there is a situation where Rome can still move, then maybe Celt will 1 or 2 more tokens here, so even exceed the 6 by 2, so it will have 8 tokens. And then if Rome would do that, there will still be no problem, because Rome will lose 2 tokens and Celt will lose 1 token, and 7 tokens is still sufficient to build a city. So that is the better option for Celt to do. There are some more conflicts to resolve. For example, here we have a conflict situation. We also exceed some limits here, like here this one and this one. The order is, first you're going to check for conflict, then you build cities, and then you do the surplus population. So building a city is removing the stack of 6 or more and replace it with a city marker. Same goes here for Rome. The city count board is only used after city construction. Each player marks on this board how many cities they have on the board. So in this case, Celt has 1 city, Rome has 2 cities, and Minoa and Hellas have 0 cities. The mutual order is defined by AST ranking. So you can look at the numbers. Minoa is AST ranking 1 and Hellas is AST ranking 15. Well, at the end of the turn, you would look at the AST and see the requirements here. You need to have 2 cities on the board. In this case, if we would be at the end of the turn, then Celt would stay here. But Rome will move 1 step forward. And Minoa has no requirements because it is still in the Stone Age. Also, Minoa will move 1 step forward. In my scenario here with only 4 players, we don't have these civilizations on the board. So this would be the case. 2 players would advance, 2 players would stay. There's some important thing new here, and that is you get trade cards. The most important part of the game is trading, and trading is done after players will get trade cards during trade card acquisition phase after city construction. The more cities the player has on the board, the more trade cards they will get. If a player has 1 city on the board, they will get a trade card from stack 1. If players have 2 cities on the board, they will get a trade card from stack 1 and from stack 2. Well, for this example, I have opened all the cards to the colored side, but normally in the game, all cards will be like this. You know, this is stack 1, this is stack 2, this is stack 3, but you don't know the identity of the cards, because every card has multiple options. I will explain what the cards do. This is called a commodity, fruit, number 3, face value 3. We also have ceramics, also face value 3, and we also have fish, calamities, slave revolt, squandered wealth, famine. You don't want these calamities, you want the commodities. So if you have enough cards, you can trade. 1 fruit is worth 3. If you have a fruit and a ceramics together, it is worth 6. But 2 ceramics is not worth 6 but 12. Why? It is the same commodity, so you can count the second box at the bottom of the card. Now you know there are exactly 8 copies of ceramics in the game. So if you have a full set of ceramics, you will have 192 trade points. You cannot combine 2 different commodities of the same face value. So the first few rounds where players will get cards, there will be no trading. Only once players have 4, 5, 6, 7 or 12 cards in hand, they will trade with each other. And all trade is done simultaneously during trade phase. I will explain how trading is done. Players will always trade 3 cards, where the first 2 cards need to be the truth. The third card can be any card they have. So, for example, one player offers 3 cards, the other player offers 3 cards. The first card is ceramics, the second card is fruit, and the third card is a bone. Well, the first 2 need to be the truth, so you can either show them or tell them, but they need to be the truth. Third card is a bone or any other card, but he promises a bone. The other player says, I offer an oil and an ochre. and they make the trade. So they switch hands, and then they look at the third card. Well, this player told the truth and he gave a bone. The other player did not tell the truth. He gave a slave revolt, a calamity. Well, during trade, it's a 10-minute limit. Players can make trade negotiations with other players. So this player will be able to get rid of the slave revolt in trade with another player. So now you see, you need to tell the truth about the first two cards. The third card can be any card. But it cannot be a non-tradable calamity. Here it clearly says non-tradable. There are a few calamities in the game that say non-tradable. Any other card can be traded. Also, you cannot promise calamities to other players. After 10 minutes, trading is over and calamity resolution is done. Every player that has calamities in hand will be the victim of the calamities. These calamities are explained in the rulebook, but also there is this calamity resolution quick chart with a quick summary of what all the calamities will do. So we have minor calamities, major calamities. They are resolved in this order. So for example, we have slave revolt, city in flames, civil war, civil disorder, famine. Well, generally speaking, they will destroy your cities, they will destroy your population or trade cards in hand. And you don't want that, so you will definitely want to get rid of these calamities. The objective of trade is to get as much trade points as possible. So in this case, for example, a full set of fruit will make 243 trade points. After trading, first calamity resolution is done, and in this case slave revolt will destroy a few of your cities. Well, you want to defend against these calamities. So what you want to do with these trade points, you can purchase civilization advances. We have 51 different advances, and every player can advance to every one of these 51 advances, and I will explain a few of them, not all of them. In this case, for example, I have mythology, and mythology will cost 60 points, so I have 243, and mythology will defend my civilization against the effect of slave revolt. It will reduce the effect, so I will get not as much damage as I would have had if I didn't have mythology. Also, we have, for example, sculpture, and sculpture will cost 50 points and will defend against the calamity called tyranny. Also, for example, agriculture. It will aggravate the calamity famine, but it has an upside. The population limits of 0, 1 and 2 will be increased by 1. So for my civilization now I can have a population here in Ultima Thule. I can have 3 population here where I can only support 2. Now I can support 3. Same goes here. So I can increase my population more. Road building, for example, 220 points. I can move each of my tokens an additional step each turn. And I have cloth making. Cloth making will say all my ships can move an additional step each turn. Now, during the game, there are also calamities like piracy and barbarian hordes, and they will put barbarian tokens on the board in pirate cities, like here. For example, this can be a city, and we have black population tokens. You have to destroy them by engaging in conflict, or you can buy cards like these. Universal Doctrine will give you a special ability, and in the special abilities phase during the game, after calamity resolution, each player that has cards with special abilities can use them. And in this case, the special ability will say you can annex a city or barbarian tokens by your own. So in this case, for example, I would say I remove these tokens and replace them with my own. It's very powerful. Or we have naval warfare, and naval warfare says you can use your ships in conflict. Well, these cards come in different colors. We have 5 different colors. We have science for green, we have religion, yellow, we have civics in red, we have the crafts in orange, and we have the arts in blue. 5 different colors. Each time you purchase a civilization advance, you will get credits for your next purchases. In this case, mythology will give you a credit token 5 for blue and 10 for yellow. That means every next turn, every yellow card will be 10 cheaper, and every blue card will be 5 cheaper. Also, this card will give you 10 credits to the card called Literacy. So next turn, if I want to buy sculpture, I don't pay 50 but 45. The more cards you have, the more credits you will have, and later in the game you can get up to the higher cards like this. Mathematics, it doesn't do much, but it will give you a lot of credits, and that is required to buy the very expensive cards like Wonder of the World and Cultural Ascendancy. During the game you will collect more and more civilization advances, which will improve your civilization. But also you require these to move forward on the AST. So for example here, the Middle Bronze Age says you need to have 3 cities and 3 civilization advances. But here the Late Bronze Age says you need to have 3 cities, 3 civilization advances, each worth 100 or more. So agriculture is worth 120 and universal doctrine 160. So you need at least 3 of these. And in the final space, Late Iron Age, the finish line, you require 5 cities, 3 civilization advances, each worth 200 or more. So for example, mathematics and monotheism are 200 and more. These are 6 victory points. But also you can have Wonder of the World. Very expensive card, 290. You will not easily get it, but it will most of the time be the finisher of the game. Or Cultural Ascendancy. Well, if one player reaches the finish line, the game will end and we will calculate victory points. Victory points are the numbers here, and also every step on the AST will give you 5 victory points. The higher cards will give you 6 victory points. So sometimes it's better to buy a card rather than to move one step forward, and that means that sometimes you will get even more turns than just advancing each turn. If only a single player achieves the final space, he will get an additional 5 victory points. It's only granted to the single player that reaches the finish line. If 2 players reach the finish line, no one will get this card. Also, each city on the board will give you 1 victory point. So a very good player will end up with somewhat 150 victory points. Half of them come from the cards and half of them come from the AST. I hope you enjoyed this explanation. Well, this is a very, very big game, so I did not explain all the details. These details, they are in the rulebook. If you read them, you will read all the exceptions and additions to the rules that I did not explain. And also, you can go to the website www.westernempires.com. There's a lot more flavor, and it includes the FAQ with all questions you have, and you can email if you have any more questions. So I hope you enjoy Western Empires, the great game of civilizations.